Awesome. Well, thanks for rescheduling and thanks for making this work.
Sure, I'm glad whichever one of you was in a motorcycle accident is okay.
Yeah, that's
We were
it.
scheduled for Indo, weren't we? And then,
Yeah, we're all good now though. It's healing nicely. It was just the skin.
Good.
Just the skin, so that's all right.
Just a flesh wound, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Welcome back to What You'll Learn. My name is Adam Ashton.
aloha, ladies and gentlemen. Mate, Amy Morin.
What's your name?
Adam. Apparently. Amy Morin, super cool chick. We just had an awesome interview, mate. How much we learned from her?
Yeah, a really cool chick. So she wrote a blog post called The 13 Things Mentally Strong People Don't Do. Went viral, wrote a book by the same title. She had a TED Talk, which is like 2.2 million views.
Yep.
And yeah, it's awesome.
Yep, check out her stuff, listen to the interview, and hopefully you guys enjoy it.
Yeah, and just before our previous episode was our 20-minute thoughts on the book. So if you want to get a bit of background on the 13 things, go for it. Otherwise, Amy gives us a really good summary.
Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, let's get stuck in. So we're with Amy Morin today, author of 13 Things Mentally Strong People Don't Do. So Amy, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me.
So we did a 20-minute, 30-minute podcast during the week on the book, which we really loved. So 13 things mentally strong people don't do. First of all, can you start explaining what is mental strength?
Yeah, mental strength is really a combination of three things. And the first one is figuring out how do you regulate your thoughts so that you don't think either overly positive, but you also don't want to be overly negative. You just want to make it so that you can think realistically. And the second part of it is regulating your emotions so that you can be in control of your emotions and your emotions don't control you. And the third part is about behaving productively despite whatever circumstances you find yourself in. And sometimes people will say, well, I'm really good at one of the three things. And other times people say, okay, I think I'm doing equally well in all three, but there's always room for improvement. I always say that we possess mental strength to a certain degree anyway, but you can always do more exercises and give up the bad habits that are holding you back and build more mental strength in your life. It's sort of like somebody said, well, I have a lot of physical strength, so I never need to work out again. Your muscles would get weak over time, and mental strength is the same. It's something you can keep building over time, and you can continuously grow and become better.
Yeah, fantastic. So you mentioned there everyone's got mental strength, is that right? And it's just to what extent and how much you work on it.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people just don't know how to work on it. And a lot of people just aren't sure, well, what else can I do to become mentally stronger?
Yeah, nice.
So you talked about mental strength helping us with our bad habits. So what do our bad habits cost us? So the value of having this mental strength.
You know, I'm a therapist by trade, and over the years I had seen that sometimes when people are doing well, it wasn't always about the new habits that they developed. Sometimes it was about the bad habits that they had, and it was about giving up their bad habits so that they could really move forward. And, you know, I'm a social worker, and by trade we learn to build on people's strengths, and I think there's a lot to be said for building on strengths, but at the same time I think we do people a disservice if we don't acknowledge our weaknesses and say, how do I work on these things? Because sometimes you're only as good as your worst habit, and if you can work on the worst habits that you have, you can skyrocket yourself forward.
Yeah,
amazing. And so you mentioned what do you do with yourself actually at the moment? What do you do?
Great question. So at the moment, before I wrote the book, I was a therapist, and writing was sort of my side hustle, something I did outside of the office. But my main career was as a therapist and a college psychology professor. Since the book has taken off, I spend a lot of time now marketing my book. I actually just wrote my second book that comes out later this year, and I do a lot more writing and speaking, and I still teach mental strength. I have an online course, but I just do it, I guess, instead of a one-on-one in an office. These days, I'm doing it on a more of a global scale. I get to teach people about mental strength in countries all over the world.
Yeah,
awesome. And you said you're on a boat at the moment.
I am. Yes, it's my latest adventure is to live on a boat. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, while we're talking about it, what's the next book?
It's called 13 Things Mentally Strong Parents Don't Do.
Oh, nice.
The readers of my first book, I just kept getting the same question over and over again with people who were asking me, how do we teach this to kids? It would be great if we could start teaching people at a younger age how to be mentally strong. So I approached my publisher and said, what do you think about a parenting book? Because we had thought about, I could write a book for kids, but I think it's really important to start with the parents, because parents are going to coach their kids and teach them these skills and be there right in the moment to reinforce it. So I thought, let's start with the parents and teach them how to teach kids about mental strength. And then maybe down the road we'll do something for kids, but I wanted the parents to have the information first.
Yeah, nice.
So in the book you mentioned you had a pretty tough time before leading up to the book. What is the role of tough times? Does that help you realize your mental strength?
I think in a lot of cases it does. In my personal experience, when I was 23, my mother had passed away, and then on the 3-year anniversary of her death, my 26-year-old husband died suddenly from a heart attack. And really those losses, I've definitely learned a lot about myself. Here I am, a therapist, and I'm telling other people about the skills and tools that they can use in their life. But then when I was going through these things myself, it was really an opportunity to use them and to figure out, well, what really works when you're going through these tough times. And I saw a lot of people in my therapy office who had gone through tough times and just felt like they never really got through it. Like it somehow held them back in life. And then I saw other people who had gone through incredible adversity, and yet it had made them stronger. And I really wanted to know, how do you go through tough times and come out okay on the other side? And so my personal journey with learning about mental strength really was eye-opening to me, to figure out, okay, it's not just about talking about these things, but doing them, and sometimes figuring out, well, what works for me, and how do you do it? How do you deal with such raw emotional pain and whatever difficulties somebody's going to face in life? Often as a society, we don't talk about that. We don't talk about mental strength. We don't talk about feelings. Yeah. And to figure out, how do you really deal with those things so that you can be okay in life, no matter what sort of challenges life throws your way.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, you wrote the article after your husband-in-law was ill. You were saying, but did you expect it to have such a huge response? Because that article went all over the world and it got shared 18,000 times, and yeah.
Yeah, so a few years after my husband had passed away, I was fortunate enough to find love again. I got remarried, and shortly after that, I found a new job, I got a new house, and I thought, this is my fresh start in life. And shortly after, my husband's father was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And I had lost my mother and my first husband in really unexpected and sudden circumstances. And in this case, it was like I knew what was coming. I knew that I was going to lose him, and I just didn't want to go through it all again. And so that was when I wrote the original article, 13 Things Mentally Strong People Don't Do. And it was a letter to myself of all the things I shouldn't do if I wanted to make it through yet another loss as strong as possible. And I sort of only published it online, sort of on a whim. I thought, well, maybe it'll help somebody else. And it crashed the website it had gone on within a matter of the same day. And I didn't know it was because of my article. I thought, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, wow.
And then Forbes picked it up, and 10 million more people read it there. And Business Insider, I think their version has almost 30 million views. And it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And all these things were happening, but I didn't tell the story of why I wrote it. So it was really interesting when it went viral. Nobody knew that it was a letter to myself.
Yeah.
I was getting news media from all over the world calling me and asking me about mental strength. And yet at the same time, I was going through this very personal pain that I wasn't ready to make public yet. So I was glad that I had the opportunity to write the book down the road, to be able to share the reason behind why I wrote that article.
Yeah, nice. And with the article, how did you come up with the 13 things?
A lot of people ask me, was there magic in the number 13? Did you mean to have 13? And no, I didn't. It was just a matter of, I think, things that I knew I just never had written down on paper. And it was a matter of the combination of the things I'd learned through my journey so far and things I'd seen in my therapy office, and just a matter of things that I knew weren't healthy, yet were really tempting to do when you're going through tough times. That we all tend to take these unhealthy shortcuts, and it makes you feel better for a minute, but then actually make bigger problems in the long term. And so I really wanted to identify those things. And I knew that as I was about to go through another tough circumstance, that if I did those things, ultimately they would hold me back. And so I just wrote them out without trying to come up with 13 or a magic number or anything like that.
Yeah. It certainly helps a lot of people around the world. We really appreciated the book. So we'll get stuck into some of our favourite things that we got out of the book. So number 4, the fourth habit, they don't focus on things they can't control. We thought that was a real good one. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Sure. We only have so much mental energy and we only have so much time, and sometimes we waste our resources on things that we can't do anything about. You can't actually control other people, or you can't control how other people feel, but we tend to put a lot of energy in those kinds of things, and it's really a waste of time. And if you just channel your energy into the things that matter most in life, you can make a huge difference. But it's scary sometimes to say, I can't control that, and to sort of give that up, to be able to admit, I can't do anything about that. Yeah. For a lot of people, that's really hard to do.
Yeah, and the one you specifically mentioned was thinking about what other people do, and that you've got really no control over what other people do.
And I think for a lot of people, that's really tough. Parents, I'll work with a lot of parents who really want to control their 15-year-old. Yeah. Well, you can't make your child make great choices when you're not in the room. You have to be able to figure out, how do I give my child the skills that he needs to make the decisions? Or a lot of people who really want to make sure that other people feel happy, or that they are pleasing other people, which is another one on the list, but it's related to this one because I think so many people just say, okay, I really want to make other people feel something or make them do something. And when you figure out, I can only do my best, I can't do anything other than that, I'm going to focus on doing my best rather than worrying about if it's good enough for everybody else.
Yeah, unreal.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, it's like, I assume you've probably read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the circle of influence versus the circle of concern.
Very similar. So another one, which is very common, I think, is they don't resent other people's success. So that's, you mentioned in your TED talk as well that's really big, and that is something that keeps a lot of us down, is that resentment of other people.
And I think in today's world with social media, it just makes it all the more difficult to sort of keep your eyes on your own life and your own journey and not be comparing yourself to other people, because you scroll through Facebook or Instagram and see your friends with a new car or on a wonderful vacation. It can make it feel like, everybody else has a better life than I do. And it's really that comparison trap that tends to cause us to get resentful, and we start to think, well, I should have that, or I deserve that, and we want to keep score. I'm a good person, so I deserve to have more things in life come my way. But it doesn't always work like that.
Yeah, I think with the Facebook as well, it always seems to be your worst moments when you're scrolling through Facebook. Either you're home alone on the couch watching TV, and then you see everyone's on their holiday in the Bahamas, or as you said, the new car. They're always at their best when they're posting, and you're always at your worst when you're looking at it.
And I think that's a great way to put it, because I think it's so true that you think, okay, I'm not doing anything on Friday night, and you look at everybody else who's out and out talking about how wonderful their lives are, and you think, oh, my life isn't nearly as good.
Yeah. What I really took from this chapter in particular that I've actually been conscious of thinking about is creating your own definition of success, and that don't get jealous of what other people have if that's not what you want. So can you talk a little bit about creating your own definition of success?
I think it's important for all of us to say, well, what would be my definition of a life well lived? When I'm 85 and I look back over my life, what would I have wanted to have accomplished? And to know what your values are, and to know what's important to you, and to know that if your definition of success is to have a wonderful family and spend lots of time with your family, then to not be resentful when your friend who works 100 hours a week can afford a bigger house than you can. But to know, okay, I'm working on my definition of success, and he may have a completely different definition of success, and that's okay. And this isn't a competition that I don't have to score about who's doing the best or who has the most.
Yeah. Love it.
It's tough. It's tough to do, I reckon.
It is tough, yes.
I thought out of the 13, that was the toughest sometimes to get a handle on, maybe from a personal point of view anyway. Number 6 was interesting. So they don't fear taking calculated risks. So you start off with on the chapter, you got a quote: "Don't be too squeamish about your actions. All life is an experiment, and the more experiments you make, the better."
And I think that so many of us, we lose sight of what's actually risky in life. We live in a sort of a really weird time, right? That so many people are afraid of public speaking, yet you'd get in a car and drive somewhere without thinking twice. Well, the chances of death are much higher when you're in the car versus when you're giving a speech. But yet,
That's right.
because things feel scary, we think, oh, it must be really risky. But it's really important to take a step back and know that your level of fear and the level of risk really aren't related. And there's tons of research about how we make decisions and how our emotions affect our decisions. And when we're excited about something, we tend to think, oh, there's very little risk or that won't happen to me. But when you're really nervous about something, we exaggerate how risky it is. And we tend to, because we're not in touch with our emotions very well, most of us anyway, it's harder to figure out, well, how do my emotions affect my decisions and how do I be more logical about it? And I think a lot of people just are never taught, how do you evaluate risk to make good decisions? And so if you can figure out how do you calculate risk and how do I practice calculating risks in life, you get better at it, but it's really a learning process.
Yeah. So how do you take these or use more logic to make better decisions? So what's your technique in doing this?
A lot of times it's about writing it down, that we can be more rational if you just write down what are the pros and cons of taking this risk, but then to also write down what are the pros and cons of not taking this risk. And when you really look at that, sometimes it can help people who are sort of stuck, when they're indecisive and they don't know, should I do this or should I not do this? And when you can raise your logic, it can decrease that emotional reactivity. And we make our best decisions when our emotions and our logic are in balance. And so when you can write those things down and look at it and then read over your list, and if you come to the conclusion, this is a good risk, I should take it, then write down 10 reasons why this is a good risk. And then when your anxiety spikes and you're trying to talk yourself out of it, go back to reading your list again. And it can give you the courage to keep taking those steps, even when it feels scary, to know, okay, but this is still a good decision, even though it feels scary.
Yeah, that's good. I like that, because if you write down the risks and all the bad things that could happen if you do it, that's probably a turn off that you need to consider what happens if you don't do it as well. I really like that technique for sure.
Another one we like, number 12, which is pretty topical at the moment. They don't feel the world owes them anything. So I interpret that as it gets a bit into our entitlement culture. We kind of have we're just owed something throughout our lives and things are just going to come for us without doing anything about it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that a lot of people have that mentality. Just because I was born and I went to college, I did these things in life, I'm a good person, I learned a lot, then I deserve to get a lot of money, or I deserve to get a lot of success. Or I'll have a lot of people that say that to me too. They'll say, well, you went through a lot of hard times, so you deserve to have this book that you wrote and to have a successful life. But that's not true. Just because you go through bad times doesn't mean that you can equal it out with good things happening later on, and that the world doesn't work like that. And when we try to keep score about what you're owed, it really keeps a lot of people stuck. Think, I deserve to have more money, I deserve to have a raise, I deserve to have good things, and the world doesn't always work like that. Things aren't always fair, and that can be hard for people to draw that conclusion. But on the other hand, when you accept that, sometimes it's freeing to know, okay, I don't necessarily have to be paid for all my good deeds, but I don't also have to be punished for all the mistakes I've ever made in life, that I can have a fresh start, keep moving forward, and I'm not entitled to things just simply by being who I am.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. That's pretty topical at the moment. Millennials always seem to cop a tough rap, but maybe it is that entitlement culture, and they need to realize that no one owes you anything.
Yeah, that's right. So, chapter number 2, they don't give away their power. So this goes into how we let other people control the way we think about ourselves.
This is the chapter I probably hear the most feedback about, because people will say, I was giving away my power, that I allowed my mother-in-law to make me feel bad about myself, or my boss's criticism was really impacting my self-worth, or I was grumpy every day because my coworkers were in a bad mood. But to really take back your power by saying, okay, I'm in control of how I think, how I feel, and how I behave. No matter what circumstances I'm in or who is around me, I can still say I'm going to be in charge, and that other people don't have the power to do those things to me. They can't drag me down or hold me back or force me to feel bad about myself unless I let them.
Yeah. And you mentioned that it's all about being proactive versus being reactive as well.
I mean, it's really, yes, to be able to say, okay, I'm going to walk into this situation and this is who I am and this is what I'm about. And when you have sort of this solid foundation of knowing those things, then you can sort of fend off. You can say, I'm going to sort of have this, make healthy boundaries for myself so that other people can't get inside my head or that they can't force me to feel something just because they're critical of me.
Yep. So how do you not give away your power? Is it this self-talk, or is it the writing techniques? Or how do you not give away your power? 'Cause that'd be a good skill to have.
Yes, sometimes it's just about changing the way you think, and sometimes it's just about being aware that, okay, I'm always grumpy when I am around these certain people, or I always feel really embarrassed to talk in a meeting when I'm at this particular meeting because I'm self-conscious, or whatever it is, but just increasing our self-awareness of how we think and feel changes depending on our circumstances or how we behave. And also, sometimes it's about setting physical boundaries. So, okay, when I'm around that particular friend or cousin, I tend to become more negative. So maybe it's about purposely having a positive conversation with that person. And if they continue to be negative and they're always complaining, maybe you end the conversation. To say, what sort of healthy limits do I set for myself so that I don't feel like other people are intruding in my life in an unwelcome way? I think sometimes we feel like victims, like I have to let that person complain to me for 4 hours, but no, you don't. You can say, I'm not going to do that anymore because it's not good for my mental strength. I need to set limits on what I'm willing to do. And when people feel empowered to do those things, it really is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, nice. And the other thing you mentioned in this chapter was the power of forgiveness, of forgiving people that have hurt you. You said that forgiving them doesn't necessarily mean you excuse or accept what they've done, but it definitely gives you that chance to let go. Is that right?
Yeah, a lot of people will hold on to this bitterness and anger and resentment for years and years and years. And ultimately, it doesn't hurt the other person. It just hurts you. And you don't have to excuse somebody's behavior or say it was okay that they hurt you. But you can say, I'm going to choose to focus on something more worthwhile with my time. So I'm going to let it go because I don't want to waste my mental energy on that person, because sometimes somebody that maybe did something hurtful to you 5 years ago, you can let it hurt you for 25 years if you keep thinking about it. And to say, I'm not going to waste my time thinking about it and keep bringing up all these painful feelings all over again.
Yeah,
for sure.
Nice. So we'll change gears a little bit. So you obviously, from our perspective, you've got a very wise head of yours. So what book do you recommend most to people?
I'm a big fan of The Last Lecture. It's a short book, but written by Randy Pausch, and he had been diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he sort of wrote a life lesson book that I just love, and I think it's a great book just to help remember what's important in life.
Yeah.
Wow.
No.
I haven't read that one yet, so that's one to add to the list for sure. What is some? Do you have any other favorite books?
I like a lot of books. I guess it depends on what minute you ask me which one I'm probably reading at the moment, but I'm a big fan of Carol Dweck's Mindset too. I think that's a great book.
Yeah, nice. We have read that one.
Yeah, we did that one 2 weeks ago. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I really liked that
good,
one.
Yes.
Probably top 5 for me. It was really good, I thought.
Definitely. Kind of on topic, what's the most valuable thing you've ever learned? And that might be something from another book or from your 13 things. Yeah, what is the most valuable thing you've learned in your life so far?
I would say you can do more than you think you can. That I think our self-limiting beliefs are what hold us back. And I think we don't even know how much potential we actually have. And it's really about challenging those beliefs and getting out there and doing the stuff that you thought you couldn't do, and to just do it anyway, and that you can surprise yourself and amaze yourself with what you can do when you just put yourself out there and do it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, nice.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, thanks, Amy, for your time. What if people want to find out more, how can they find you? And you mentioned you got an online course, Mental Strength, Mastering the 3 Core Factors. How can people find more information if they want more mental strength?
Sure. My information is on my website, which is Amy Morin, LCSW, as in licensed clinical social worker.com.
Yep. Nice. All right. Well, thanks, Amy, and enjoy your day on the boat.
Thanks, guys, for listening.
We hope you enjoyed that interview. We got a lot out of it, and I'm sure you did too.
Guys, if there's one thing you can do for us, it'd be hit subscribe or write a review. It means give us good ratings on iTunes so more people are listening to our shit.
Yep. Even mention it to one friend and say, there's 2 blokes there, right? And yeah.
Get it, man. Share it there.